Hey YouTube, let's talk about finding the witchiness in environments when maybe your environment isn't witchy. And this is something I had to deal with a lot. I've talked about it on my channel before because I live in Arizona and me and that environment don't really vibe all that well. And beyond that, there are plenty of times when we're going to be surrounded in places that don't have the quote-unquote witchy, spooky, or even just like natural like vibe that we sometimes accumulate with stuff, right? And one of those reasons is because environments vary. I had to kind of come to terms with the idea that, one, just because it's not fitting my ideal of what is witchy doesn't mean it's not witchy. See what I'm saying? So like, first things first, for a long time I felt like, oh my, I kept saying the phrase over and over in Arizona, there's no nature here, there's no nature here, it's awful, it's no nature here, which is ridiculous because I'm surrounded by nature. There's plenty of nature here. It's just a different type of nature than what I'm used to. And also a different type of nature than what I vibe with personally very, very well, right? Like I need rain, cold, clouds, trees, these type of things vibe a little more with who I am as a person as opposed to cactus and desert and mountains. So that's the first thing that I would recommend for anyone who's like trying to feel good in the vibe. One, how are you feeling in that area, and are you putting a little bit of preconceived notions on it, and could you explore differently an area to see how it is? Because there's a lot of things that I used to really hate about the desert, and there were a lot of things that I used to despise about it, and I didn't really look into any of the benefits for a very long time. But there are a lot of things where I realized that, hey, the amount of fire energy in this place is very interesting. Also, the amount of natural sun energy definitely changes a lot of stuff. I take hyper notice now of monsoon season, and when the darker half of the year comes, I worship darkness so much more here than I ever have anywhere else before, because with the darkness comes the cold, because the sun can't heat up the land nearly as much as it usually does the rest of the year. So there's a lot of things that I now take extra care with because I understand the environment that I'm in, and I take notice of that in the witchy sense of things as well. The second thing that I would recommend to do is, again, taking notice of things that are more curatable. Is that a word? Maybe, maybe not. Basically, what can you bring into your life or your space that will make something witchy, or make you feel a little more like you have a little alcove with you at all times, or a little home away from home type of deal, right? And so, for example, like I'm doing a lot more where it's like I have random things that just like remind me of spooky, fun, that playful side of witchcraft a lot, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be serious stuff where it's like that's a spell for sure that I use all the time, that I carry with me always. But like some of the accessories and stuff I carry with me are just because I like to have reminders of witchiness wherever I go, to let me get into that vibe and stuff and really feel into it. I spend more of my time and really take notice and moments in the times when I do find myself in a witchy place. So for me, when I take an adventure out to the Pacific Northwest until I move there, or if I take an adventure to even just up to Flagstaff where there are naturally more trees and it is colder in Arizona because of the elevation, then I really savor it. I really take the time to in as much as possible. And I also plan into my schedule trips to go visit these types of places, or to, you know, take time at the metaphysical shop, or, you know, I schedule in time to go to witchier places around me on a regular basis as part of my life, just to take in that vibe more, because I know in the day-to-day of just driving to and from work and sitting in a cubicle and being surrounded by desert and cacti and everything else, that's not going to invigorate me as it would if I was just driving to and from work. If I say lived in Portland, like there's gonna be natural trees everywhere, it's gonna be raining, I take more time with that. Like I really just absorb those moments in when I can get them, if I'm having to go outside. And the ones that I curate within, I make sure to put in as many places as possible. Now this might be hard if you're a witch that is in the closet in any way, shape, or form, but there are more subtle things you can do. Instead of like saying having a pentacle or a big t-shirt that says I am a witch or something, like, you know, there's other things you can do. One of the things that I love to do is I bring crystals with me. Beautiful, happy crystals, yay. Wherever I go. A lot of times they'll just be in my bag or in my pocket type of deal. I will also have them on my desk. If there's a certain thing I'm feeling a lot and I'm just like, I'm not vibing all that well, then I bring stuff like this with me. I also take time to, like, there's certain like perfumes and stuff, things that I might reach for a more mundane option. If I'm feeling especially low and not vibing with stuff, I will make sure to have a witchy option just so that my environment's a little more witchy. And also I immediately think to the idea of, what if you're not even near nature, period? AKA, what if you are in a city and it is very man-made, very constructed, this type of deal. But that has this very specific energy, could be a very witchy vibe as well, if you take notice of it in certain ways. So, you know, I don't know, there's something about like that whole like mystical fairy tale in the woods that just many of us do not live in. We don't live on that little cottage on the outskirts of everyone else. Like, witchcraft used to be this thing where a lot of the witches were also ostracized. If you were ever out and you're put onto the outskirts of a town or society in general, you were out in the wilderness. But nowadays we live in the city or in the suburbs or wherever the hell else that we're going to find ourselves in, right? So when it comes to like suburbs or city or places that are more like building, like man-made, built up, dense, one of the things that I learned when I was talking to a couple people at the metaphysical shop I was at was the idea that we are actually constantly surrounded by fire and water when we're in a building, and that is because there's electricity running through all of our walls with the wiring, and there is also water because of all the plumbing. And this idea immediately made me go, like, it felt so much like, oh, that's right. So there's like a certain level of charge that is just in here at all points in times. Also, the building materials of things are normally made out of things we get from the earth. So there's a huge amount of earth energy. So that what you're surrounded in a lot of the time, or surrounded in, you know, city-wise, even if you're outside, is a constant amount of fire, of water, and of earth at all times, because that's what our buildings are made out of. When it comes to actual air energy, I think this makes a lot of sense as to why we feel we need to open the windows. It gets stuffy. It's not just because the air itself is kind of stale and recycled and it's good to have fresh air in, but I also think it brings in fresh air energy. When you're inside and the air can't flow through with open windows, things of this nature. What else would be open other than your windows, Sam? Doors, I guess, screen doors. We want a flow of energy and stuff. So thinking about that, thinking about how much fire and power is literally running through my wall right now because there is a light on, or how much water is running through my walls to bring me a glass that I am drinking out of. This type of deal. Taking notice of that definitely made me feel like, oh, that's why. Like, for me, I get into a city environment, oh, it feels so good. I was born in Chicago, grew up kind of in the suburbs, and then I went to college in the actual city of Chicago, so I definitely love a city vibe. I thrive off of it so much, and that energy and that hustle and bustle just like really pulls me in. If anything, it makes me go all the go, so I could definitely lean into it and find that type of witchy energy within that. And so that's one thing that definitely helps me, is the idea of like, oh, that's why. Like, the amount of fire energy that is just in a city, along with all of the water energy in the earth, from the buildings alone, make a lot of sense, as opposed to the amount of energy that would be, you know, in the woods is a little more, or, you know, out in the country is possibly a little more balanced in that sense. You know, it's not so like in a containment, it's a little more free-flowing, I would assume. Or just how it would have naturally a lot more earth and air energy, since there's a whole lot more of like plants and stuff all over the place. Another thing to do if your witchy environment isn't all that witchy, I would say ask the universe and the environment to show up for you in ways. I have noticed that when I ask for it, again, play cautious with this. It depends on how you feel about working weather energy or weather magic per se, but I have noticed that when I am feeling extremely down and really low and about to be like, oh no, and it's about to be like sunny on consistent for the next whatever day, the next day suddenly there will be cloud coverage. I might not get rain, I might not get anything else in this desert, but the universe seems to give me a breath of at least covering the sun for a good amount of the day, so I can like just have that blanket in a way. So ask the universe for a bit of a breath. Maybe it's raining too much, maybe it is too hot for you, maybe it's too cold for you. One of the, like, ask the universe for a breath of like just a bit of something, a relief, a temporary relief, and see if you get it or not. I've noticed that when I'm really freaking wanting it, like really needing it and wanting it, I tend to get it, even if it's just like a little bit of relief. It's not exactly what I want, but even Arizona's climate will acquiesce to my little bit of cloudy days needed. Finally, I think one of the great ways to remember if, say, your witchy environment doesn't mess well with you is that you have another environment that you can go into all the time, and then it's the astral. And this is one of the reasons I love traveling to my astral in so much, and why it is such a big part of my practice. And that is because there I can wander in the woods. There I am in an old world city. There I am surrounded by the rain, but never getting wet. I am getting all of the benefits of stuff, and it gives my mind a break from having to participate in the environment I am in now, which isn't all that witchy, or isn't all that rain, forest, good vibing energy type of deal. My astral is my place that I go to that is perfectly for me, the one that's within me. Traveling to places in our minds that give us a taste of what we want if we necessarily can't get it quite yet is important. No matter what, at the end of the day, if a place isn't really vibing with you, I would highly, highly, highly encourage people to explore the idea of moving. Because I struggled really hard to make Arizona my home. I struggled really hard to get out there and go on dates and meet friends and to participate in the environment as it is, and to take notice of it and to take pleasure in it and attempt to see what I could gain from the desert. And at the end of the day, I have realized that this environment just does not freaking suit me. It's not going to work. And so because of that, I made some drastic changes with my life and did things like move back in with my parents, paid off a lot of my debt, really focused in on my work skills so that I would be a better hire, so that I could move elsewhere, because this just isn't working for me. It's hard. It is not at all easy to gather the funds or to uproot your life in any way, shape, or form. But ultimately, I have a very big belief in environment being a huge part of who we are and how we are. And I don't necessarily think that forcing us to live into a place that just doesn't vibe with us works all that well. Give it your damnedest, like give it a good try, see if it works out, taste different places. But ultimately, if a place is calling you somewhere different, or if you just know that this place is not the one for you, then it's okay to move, and it's okay to do a total change just for that spiritual, energetic sense. It's something I've worked with a lot in my head, saying that like, hey, listen here, you have job, you have family, just because you haven't met extremely close friends here, or you haven't met the guy of your dreams here yet, doesn't mean you won't. And while that could be possibly true, I also think that, you know what, no matter what, at the end of the day, I walk outside and I'm aggravated. I walk outside and it rubs me the wrong way. So I cultivate the best witchy environment that I can at this current moment, and then knowing that I am working my damnedest to get to one that will really feed my soul. Anyway, this is part of Youtober, and so comment down below. What do you feel about witchy places, and how would you cultivate a better witchy environment if one doesn't necessarily vibe with you? Do you create a more witchy atmosphere in your private spaces as much as you can, or are you people that are just like, you know what, no, you can make more of it. You don't necessarily have to move. All those things down below. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.